Robinson, the 3 through 5 building.
Good evening. This is Joni Dobbs, principal at J.C. McKenna Middle School, which is 6 through 8.
Hello, Jason Knott, high school principal.
Hi everyone, this is Andy Alexander, formerly Andy Varsho. I'm the Athletics and Activities Director.
Hello, this is Abby Tway, the school district nurse.
All right, thanks everybody, welcome. So the first question of the night was, all of the attendees are not on video, correct? And that is correct. So the only thing, unfortunately, that everybody here can see is me. I apologize for that. So nobody at home can see anybody else. Nobody can read anybody else's comments. If at any point, starting now, at any time on the Q&A tab down below, submit a question. And we're going to try to get to every question that's submitted tonight in real time. Questions that we think kind of rise to the level of being on our website FAQ. We're just going to add to the FAQ, and that document is kind of living and breathing. And we're going to kind of jump right into that. I'm going to share my screen here in just a sec. Okay, so this is the Return to Learn website that we have created, which I believe has done a pretty good job communicating, our options for families. This was the previous webinar. I'm sure most everybody has seen this by now. We've updated this effective today. We've made a number of changes to the website today and over the weekend, and I think a lot of them are relevant. I do want to mention that we are recording this webinar, so we will put this on the website at the point as well for parents to see. But we are still in Rock County Phase 2. And I do want to mention, so last Friday, a lot of you probably saw that Dane County issued an emergency order that all of their kids countywide grade 3 through 12 needed to start the school virtually. And I think that got released at something like 5:15 p.m. And within an hour, I think I had 12 text messages. And I just kind of want to address not so much that, but kind of talk about where we get our information from and the role that Rock County has to play with that. So really quickly, I'm going to share the Rock County dashboard here. So Rock County Public Health has created a dashboard for all of the school districts in the county, and each dashboard is also specific to each district. So we've got not only county metrics, but also district metrics within our jurisdiction of enrollment and geography. And the most important page, I believe, of what they provided us is this page here. And they break it down into green, yellow, and red. And so what I'm showing here is not necessarily public information. It's basically, a private portal that the county has shared with us to help us make decisions in collaboration with the county about if and when we might need to close a building, if and when we might need to close a school. The good news in Rock County is that new cases over the last 14 days continue to be trending downward. That's a good thing. So ultimately, there's, I think, 6 different metrics that we're looking to turn green before we can progress to Phase 3. So I think that, based upon what Dane County released, several days ago, you would think that things are much, much worse. But, when you dig into the data, in actuality, in Rock County, things are actually trending in a pretty good direction. So overall, the number of cases per day are decreasing. The percent of positive tests have also been decreasing. And then, so Rock County set a goal to have fewer than 240 tests per day. And the last update, which was a week ago Wednesday, they're at 218. So that's all pretty good news. So I just wanted to kind of share that and just let everybody know that, Rock County is, certainly different than Dane County. I think we're about 30% of the population of Dane County. So, obviously every county in the state handles this a little bit differently. So again, at any point, throw questions in the Q&A. We're gonna, get to those here in just a little bit. I do want to point out some significant changes in the Return to Learn website. On the FAQ portion, we did add a number of FAQs related to our first webinar that we had, also based upon families that chose to email the virtual learning website. And by the way, if you have any questions or anything related to this website, or anything virtual learning, just simply click on this down here. That's virtual learning at evansville.k12.wi.us. That does come to me and one other individual, and we're kind of vetting every email and personally responding to everything. And then some of those, like I said, some of the questions rise to the level of going to our FAQ, thinking that other families might be interested as well. So the FAQ has certainly grown and has changed. But I want to draw your attention to, in the last couple of weeks, some documents that have also changed. So over here is the Family Guide to COVID. This is a document that we think is a really good resource. Now, this is not Rock County specific, and it's about 98% in line with Rock County. We do believe it's probably going to stay on the website because we do think it's really a robust, it's a really good document. I think it very simply for every parent helps answer the question. So if your child is sick, then what? If they're sick with symptoms, then what? If they test positive, then what? And you kind of just follow the flow chart here. And this is the most up-to-date and the best document that we've seen thus far. The one difference would be if you look at the symptoms here in the middle, what the other communication that we're going to share out is that the Rock County perspective is 2 or more symptoms. And that doesn't quite indicate that here. So that's just the slight inconsistency between this being a CDC document based upon what Rock County and their interpretation. So I do think this is a really good document. I implore you guys to take some time and take a look at that document in your free time. The next document here is our COVID exposure guide. And so this is for all of our, not only students, but also all the staff members in the district. And this document was also just updated on Friday. And this answers the question, if there's a child in my room or in my, son or daughter's classroom, and they tested positive, what happened? Or if they got sick and they tested negative, what then happens? Or what happens if a kid has symptoms, they get sent home from school, and for whatever reason, the family just refuses to test. So all of those kind of scenarios are answered really well here in this document. And as you can see, oftentimes the process of what to do and when, the differentiation really is if there's symptoms or if there's no symptoms. And again, it's just really important that families communicate with us and let us know if kids do present symptoms. They would call the attendance line. They would let Abby Tway, our school nurse, or our health clerks know, and then we can compile all that information, and that helps us make decisions as a district. And we think that that's really important. The next document I want to share with you is the school closure response matrix. This was also updated today. I don't know why it's so tiny on here, but just click on there. So this document here really provides us guidance as a school district to what happens if there's a positive case, what happens if somebody quarantines, and then there's a flow chart where we have to kind of determine, are there other kids in the classroom? Were they socially distanced? Were kids wearing masks? And it helps us kind of flow through the process to determine if that classroom should close down, and then subsequently down the road, if enough classrooms or if enough cases were present, if we would close a school building, or even, hopefully we don't get to this point either, close the entire district. But it's really important to know that, there is no kind of golden rule, like there's no, if you reach this threshold, then this happens, there's no magic number. Everything that starts with diagnosis and contact tracing goes through Abby Tway, our school nurse, and then we've been assigned a Rock County Health Department nurse as well. So each district in the county has their own nurse. And so between Abby and the Rock County public health nurse, they will work in collaboration to do all the contact tracing and to compile all the data and to help us in collaboration with the department make a determination about the status of our classrooms and buildings. And I think, why I think it's important to highlight that is I think, a lot of parents and families were kind of looking for, well, what number would it be? How many kids? And I think it's important to know that we have to treat every case individually, and we have to follow the process and go through and kind of assess and compile data based on every singular case. And there will be an investigation and tracing for every case. And then lastly, this document has been added on here since the first Zoom webinar. And this was released from Wisconsin's DHS, and just kind of has some general questions that families might have, like, some people think, well, should we get all kids as a baseline tested before the start of the school year? Well, that's actually not recommended, or should we get all kids and staff, antibody tested? Well, that's also not recommended. And it goes through and kind of, talks about why, some of those things are recommended versus not recommended. I think at this point, we've got a few questions in the Q&A. Why don't we start with some of those, and we'll go from there.
Right, the first question here is, how is the school handling gym and recess with masks and social distancing? This is Mrs. Dobbs here, again, principal at the middle school. So at the middle school, well, with all buildings, they will continue to wear a mask whenever they are not able to social distance. So if they are outside, doing a gym activity where they can be more than 6 feet apart, then we would be able to allow kids to take off a mask at that time. But if they cannot ensure that they are 6 feet apart, then they would keep that on the entire time. And the same would go for recess time. Kids will have masks on the majority of the day for whatever reason. And that's true at all of the buildings. The question here, if a student in the blended program at J.C. McKenna or EHS has symptoms of illness, COVID-19 related or otherwise, that would keep them from attending school with confidence, will it be acceptable for them to attend school virtually? If they feel up to it on a day, they would typically be on site at school. Yes, absolutely. And that's actually the expectation, that if a student isn't able to come into the building due to whatever reason, if they're feeling up to it, then yes, they should be able to join virtually still.
Yeah, I would add to that, that is I think, Joni, maybe you kind of touched on it, but that is the preferred plan, that anytime kids are isolating or quarantined, whether it's symptoms or whether it's a positive test, that 612, that is the plan. So they would just go to the synchronous to whatever, forever how long that needs to be, whether it's, the 24 hours or whether it's the 10 days. The other thing that, we wanted to indicate tonight too, is we do fully acknowledge that, what we're trying to do from a middle school, high school perspective with the full-time synchronous instruction and even the blended instruction by streaming live from the classroom, I think this is a pretty progressive way to try to incorporate virtual learning, very authentic, legitimate virtual learning into our general education environment. We know there are going to be some internet limitations. There's going to be some hiccups. There's going to be times kids are just going to get bad signals. There's going to be time that, kids from home are going to disconnect. There is going to be some frustration, but, we are going to ask parents for some understanding. We're going to ask, for some grace as we try to get this thing rolled out. But, it was pretty clear, both when we talked about this from an administrative team perspective, and then when our implementation team, brought the idea back, that I think we all would rather take the gamble on the synchronous instruction, both blended and live as a full-time option, compared to the kind of asynchronous approach that we used last spring. We took very seriously the community feedback that we got in the spring, and I think a lot of parents were asking for that. Now, we know that the spirit is there. Our staff are embracing it for the most part. I mean, I think there's some anxiety there as well, but we have to acknowledge that, one of the things that might be out of our control a little bit is going to be the internet connection. But we're certainly going to do our best and try to make that go. Looks like we have a couple more questions, Joni.
Yep. So Mark, this one is directed towards you. It asks if younger students will be allowed to wear face shields, and also if kindergarten is going to be having a staggered start.
Yes, kindergarten will be having a staggered start. Teachers have reached out to families in the past. We've based that on the alphabet and the first letter of the last name. Just with our unique class placement situation, teachers have made that cutoff not so much alphabetically. So they've reached out to families individually to let them know which day will be their child's first day. If you have not received that, don't be afraid to give me a call here at school or send me an email. and we can catch you up to speed on that. In terms of the face shields, if a student were to wear one, that's certainly okay, but they would be required to wear a face mask as well, covering their mouth and nose, because that provides the most safety that way. There may be situations where teachers are working closely with the student and really need to, from a speech and language standpoint, from a phonics standpoint, to actually see how they're pronouncing words. We'd have some precautions in place for that as well. Some safety shields between the teacher and the student when they're working, and potentially face, the face shields as well.
Next question would be probably for all of the buildings. It's asking, how will the school be handling lunch? So Mark, if you want to start, and then we'll go through each of the buildings.
Sure thing. We're looking at a recess situation for starters, where we're not going to send a full grade level of students outside. It's just too much exposure. So we'll send out half the group at a time. So we're going to get a group of students from one grade level outside, and then they would move to the lunchroom, where we would have prepackaged meals. We'd have signage and stickers on the floor to ensure social distancing in the lunch line. At that time, other students would join them. In years past, we've had 2 grade levels full of students. For example, maybe a second grade class from Levi and a third grade class from Tris would be in at the same time. That won't happen this year. There will only be 1 grade level at a time, and students from each cohort, students from one teacher's class, would sit in the same area each time. We'd certainly socially distance, face the same direction. There'd be a lot of hand washing and sanitizing, and then we come through and sanitize the whole lunchroom, and then the next grade level would come in. So it's about half as many students in that lunchroom, with lots more space and lots more table space.
And that's the same for the 3-5 building. So Mark and I are doing that collaboratively. So we will have our own separate lunch times, and Mark will have his own separate lunch times.
And at the middle school, we are breaking each grade level up into 2 sections. The maximum number of students that we would have in the cafeteria at a time would be 45, but it looks closer to around 30 based on the numbers as of today. And one of the reasons for us breaking up the individual grade levels that way is because we also have limited outside space right now. We have a lot of blacktop area, but we don't have any of our green space ready for us yet, which was intended. So we are breaking that up to allow kids to go outside for 20 minutes and then come in and eat lunch, and then the other group vice versa. So we will have supervisors outside and inside for each of those cohorts.
This is Jason from the high school. So typically the high school runs 2 lunches. We will be doing so again this year. And with the cohort model, we'll have half of the students there on each day, which if you were to break it down into numbers, rough numbers, it would put approximately 135 students in each of those lunches on a cohort day. We have 31 lunch tables. We cleared the cafeteria area of all unnecessary furniture, seating other than the lunch tables, and spread them out. And then we've designated 3 seats at the normal lunch tables that seat 10 students that are available for students to sit at. So we have a maximum capacity of 93 students approximately. We are extending, historically, Evansville High School allows seniors the opportunity to have open lunch campus where they can go home for the lunch period. We extended the lunch periods by 10 minutes each to 40 minutes to allow for that travel time and for students to arrive safely back for classes. And we are also going to be extending open lunch privileges to juniors and seniors this year that have permission from parents if they don't have age of majority. So we feel comfortable about being able to get the numbers down. And we are going to utilize outdoor seating with social and physical distancing while the weather permits here in the event that that was an issue, but we don't foresee it being an issue.
A follow-up question to that, Mark and Barb, if you could talk about how many kids would be in the lunchroom at a time. I think Jason and I had addressed that, but there was a follow-up question.
Sure. In any year prior to this, we could have potentially over 300 kids in there. This year, we're looking at having a little over 100 at a time, depending on the grade level.
Yeah, that's correct. And Tris, it'll be a little bit less. So I don't think any of ours will be 100. We'll be a little bit under.
Next question, how is the school handling if a child tests positive and the said child has a sibling in other grades? Will those siblings be made to stay out?
I can answer this. This is Abby Tway, the school nurse. So Rat County Health Department has given recommendations and guidelines for us to follow, depending on whether or not the student is considered a close contact, which I'm assuming in a sibling relationship that would be a close contact. So therefore, it would be also considered an exposure. So there are guidelines that we have to follow given by Rat County Health Department to also make that person quarantine for a set amount of days.
Next question, when the kids are doing virtual learning, will they be able to ask questions during live lessons like the Zoom meeting? Yes, absolutely, they will be able to do that, and they can type in their questions as well. When are the bus schedules going to be released, and will the Highway 14 construction be taken into account?
Ringhand is planning to release the bus schedules on Thursday. They will be posted on our website. The anticipated plan is routes will be consistent as they had been in the past. They may just run about 5 or 10 minutes later than they had in the past. At this time, Ringhand is not planning that we will need to do any double routes. So we're anticipating that routes this year will look similar to they have last year, and we are continuing to encourage parents to drive their students to school if they're able to.
Will those doing blended be starting the virtual days the first week of school, or is that being delayed to the second week? You should have gotten a communication from middle school and high school on Friday. Both of us sent that out at 5 o'clock. So if you did not get that communication, please check your clutter or your junk mail, as we have sent that out, and it does detail the start of the weeks. However, our blue cohort will be starting on Tuesday and Wednesday. Virtual kids will not log in unless they are full-time virtual. They'll log in on Thursday and Friday and come with in the classroom, I should say, virtually with our white cohort. So they would come Thursday, Friday, and then the following week it will be our newest schedule. So all virtual kids would be attending on those days and such. So please, if you didn't get that communication, check your inboxes to make sure you're getting the Skyward messages for that. Next question, will desk have, oh, go
Joni,
ahead.
this is Jason. Can I jump in on that real quick just to clarify the purpose that we went with that process is to allow staff and students in the blended model to go over what the processes are going to look like and what that virtual expectation piece is going to look like moving forward. And we felt that that would be more efficient to devote the time to the students in the buildings on those 2 days, and then we'll hit the ground running that following week. But it was done to be able to kind of dedicate the time to those students rather than having to try to do those things virtually.
I'm going to put these two questions together here. Will desks have clear student desk shields, or how will the desk spread out? And then with kids attending 5 days at school, when will the deep cleaning be done? Some students will have some desk shields, and that is based on what their individual needs are, but they will not be at every student's desk. It is per need. Their desks will definitely be spread out, so we're using that guideline of 6 foot of physical distancing. So that would be like from nose to nose would be 6 feet apart. And remember, students are also wearing face coverings during that time as well. With the kids attending 5 days school, deep cleaning, that will be done nightly. Our district has purchased electrostatic sprayers. These electrostatic sprayers can be utilized every single night. So our custodial staff will be busy doing that deep cleaning nightly. Can clarification be added to the frequently asked questions on when student can or should attend virtually versus in person if showing signs of symptoms? Abby, maybe that one would be for you.
Well, and I think this is also relative to the earlier question of if there's a kid who is blended and then they are home ill. I think it's related to that. I think that's the purpose of this question, and we can definitely add that as well.
If kids are being dropped off at school, are they to enter a specific or assigned door? I have a 7th and a 4th grader. 6th, 7th, and 8th will be assigned a door. We will send that communication out on Thursday. There's a couple of things we're finishing up at the board meeting Wednesday night, and then we'll be sending out a whole packet to all families 6 through 8. We'll also have a lot of signage outside. We know it will not be perfect on day 1 or day 2, but we will continue to work on that. At the younger grade levels, how are you working doors?
So ours will be actually the same. So we'll have assigned doors as well, and you will be getting that information in the next day or 2. And there'll be lots of signage and a lot of people out there to help.
Same is true K2. There will be assigned doors to students and to classrooms, and teachers will be meeting them out there as they learn about those spots and learn about the social distancing and lining up.
Yep.
Will kids who have a Chromebook keep the same ones? We received an email stating they need to turn them in. They will bring them with on day 1, and our tech crew is going to have a plan for each of the buildings so that it disrupts the least amount of time as possible from student learning. They will do a quick check for Chromebooks. Some kids might get different ones, and this sounds silly, but really it's because of the charger that they may have. We want to wire all of our Chromebook carts in each of the classrooms with the same type of charger. That way a student can be assigned each number so that we can have those Chromebooks interchangeable just for that individual student. If students are new to the district or they did not check out a Chromebook in the spring and they need one now, that will be given to them on their first day in the building. If they're not coming to the building, we will do a virtual pickup. A virtual student pickup, meaning that kids will come here. You can't really pick up anything virtually.
And if Joni, if you're okay with me interrupting, I did talk with Larry Martin, our tech director, and we talked about K2 and possibly 3-5 having a slower rollout of returning Chromebooks just to make those first few days run a little more smoothly for kids.
Great, thanks, Mark. I have heard that if a student at EHS starts 100% virtually, there will be no room for that student in the classrooms if they decide to change to the blended model. Is that true?
No, the idea would be that it's going to be dependent on space in classes because we have to stick to those numbers for the safe physical and social distancing. So no, that would not be a statement like that they would not be allowed to switch is not accurate. It would depend on the space and the classes that they were in, and we're going to try to be accommodating to families. There will be windows, obviously natural progressions of when switches might make more sense, but that would not be accurate to say they would not be allowed the opportunity to switch. It'll depend on the space in the rooms of the cohorts. And
that would hold true at the middle school too. Are the kids having lockers this year? Are they supposed to bring all their supplies? So K through 5, they're going to have their cubby areas that they can put some things into, and they will have a process figured out for that so that kids can get their coats into their cubbies and those kinds of things. 6 through 8, the way that our lockers are set up is actually perfect because we can ensure that students are social distancing by having one classroom go and put their jacket into the locker. At the beginning of the day, we will not be using lockers throughout the day, so kids will be carrying their backpacks, and that's true at the high school as well. Kids will be carrying their backpacks to each of their classes, so we're making sure that we really talk to kids about only bringing what you need to school rather than carrying everything in your backpack and treating that as your locker. So bring supplies that they need, additional supplies like all the Kleenex and that kind of thing. You can bring that the first day if your child wants to, but if you bring that on a day that's more convenient when they're a little more secure about what they're doing and where they're going, that's absolutely fine as well. What will the first day of school be for the students physically going to school? And that will be different probably for each of the buildings, but we're setting up some similarities as well. A portion of that time will be set up to talk about what are all of the COVID things that we're doing within each of the buildings so kids know what those expectations are. And then for middle school, we're doing a shortened schedule, so they will go to all of their day one classes and still get some of that information as well.
Hey, Joni, I just want to jump in there and indicate, we've mentioned this at the previous webinar, but I think it's important for everybody to know that we are going to spend a significant amount of time that first week just letting kids be kids, letting them reconnect with classmates, letting them re-experience, the kind of the social entity that is school. Even kids that are attending synchronously to get them to be able to converse with classmates. These last 5 months, I think, have been really challenging for lots of kids, lots of families, and we think it's really important to hit on some of those socio-emotional components of just letting kids be kids. So that's definitely going to be a priority of ours the first week.
Jason, this is an EHS question. Will EHS students who attend virtually keep their Chromebook from last year, or will they have to return it and pick up a new one?
Nope, the students will be, that'll be part of the procedure for the blended kids. They'll just end up kind of checking back in with their Chromebook during those first days back to make sure they still have the same asset tag, and they will keep the same devices that they have had all along. Same thing with the virtual students who already have them in possession. They will not get a different one. That'll be their Chromebook.
If a student exhibits signs or symptoms during school, how will this be handled before a parent and or guardian can pick up the said child? I'll send that one to you, Abby.
Yeah, this is for me. So we have set up isolation rooms in each of our buildings to accommodate kids who are experiencing symptoms. So, they'll be isolated from other students. They'll be monitored while they're in the sick room, temperature checked regularly, and hope parents are able to pick them up as soon as possible. So that's going to be a really important message that we have to get out, is that parents really need to get to the school as soon as possible.
Will the 4th through 6th graders be using their Chromebooks for classwork this year? 6th graders definitely will be using their Chromebooks for classwork. 6th, 7th, and 8th grade should be taking their Chromebooks back and forth from home to school each day. I believe K-5, you guys were keeping your Chromebooks in the building correctly? Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. And I can speak for the 3rd through 5th graders. So yes, they will be using their Chromebooks. They always have used their Chromebooks for certain work in the classrooms. This year, we'll probably be using it a little bit more. Again, we just want to make sure everybody is used to the format of Google Classroom in case we would have to all go virtual. But we will not be having them go back and forth. So it's not like they'll have an assignment that they can't do because they can't take their Chromebook.
Yep, same true with K2. Ultimately, we want the Chromebooks where the kids are. So if they're in person, we'll ask that they bring them back sometime, end of the first week or into the second. They will use them. They'll learn more about Google Classroom. We do some keyboarding work, and we are going to identify library books to check out through the Chromebooks this year as well.
If a teacher were to get COVID, does the entire class switch to virtual?
I can answer based on whether or not there was exposure in the classroom. So based on our guidelines, it would just depend on if the teacher had close contact with the kids. I think, Scott, maybe you want to go into whether or not, if the teacher is able to continue to teach, does the entire class switch to virtual, or I don't know if that was the intent of the question.
Yeah, and quite honestly, we're still grappling with this scenario. There are, we think, some circumstances where we could potentially get a sub to cover a classroom and have a teacher who maybe was symptom positive, but then feels better, but still has to be quarantined. So maybe by day 3, that teacher has an ability to teach from home. But there's nuance, because that wouldn't necessarily work with every subject area, with every grade level, with every content area. So we're still kicking that one around. I think that's a really good question, and we don't even have a 100% answer on that.
Jason, this one is for you. If an older sibling has open lunch, can the younger sibling go home for lunch with parent permission? A ninth grader, younger sibling?
Yep, I saw that one. I was hoping I was going to get through the night without having to answer some of these intricate open campus questions. But so the short answer, we have historically allowed students that live within walking distance, regardless of their senior status, to walk home for lunch. We do have a stipulation that only one student travel per vehicle. It's in the policy that we try to keep it so that we're not having groups of students leaving. What I would indicate is we've modified some of the open campus policies this year related to the COVID situation and trying to reduce numbers. So I would encourage, and I'll send out some clarification to families at some point this week about the lunch stuff. I would encourage the parent to contact me about the situation, and certainly it's something we can explore. But students within walking distance, we do allow students to walk home for lunch. So.
Yeah, I would just follow up and say easiest thing to do would be put that request in writing to Jason, and then give us a couple days to kick around the pros and cons of changing that process.
Yep.
Next question is just asking to describe the process for students walking in hallways from class to class. Will distancing be monitored by teachers? So maybe we'll start with Mark and go up through the buildings.
Sounds good, and I'm sure it will look different at each building, but I think K2, even 3-5, it lends itself to appropriately spacing kids, as teachers are going to walk with the kids when they go to specials, when they go to lunch, when they go to recess. They're going to help them get lined up the right way. We're gonna stagger the use of the hallway as well as lockers. So there's one cohort out there at a time. It will look a little different with specials this year, as in many cases, the special teachers will be either coming to the classroom or, like in PE, maybe coming to the classroom to take them outside rather than going to that special site as they have in the past.
And that's all the same at 3-5, Tris.
At the middle school, it's a little bit different because we changed classes. We're not in one classroom the entire time. The design of the new middle school makes it fairly easy to be able to keep cohorts of kids together and travel. In the center of each of the class grade level bands, we have a resource area. So we're going to treat that resource area much like a roundabout and teach kids that they always go to the right. Even if their next class is to the left, they're still going to travel right, just to help us keep with more of that physical distancing. It's not possible to keep 6 feet away during that time, but students will be wearing their masks that entire time. And we will kind of do, Scott and I have joked that it's going to kind of look like a little bit of a dance, and we have lots of windows so that teachers can see when that group is being dismissed, so then they can dismiss that next one as well.
Hey, Jason, do you want to talk a little bit about the signage that Rob and company have printed with our new equipment as well?
You read my mind. Yep. So high school wise, we're not using bells for this school year. That was one of the recommendations that we've been hearing floating around, is because that's kind of that signal that everybody a mass exodus into the hallway. So teachers will be monitoring the time for the class, and then we're asking them to kind of do a traffic cop thing, is kind of take a peek out in the hallway and stagger the release of our students. And Joni touched on traveling on the right side of the hallway. Our stairwells are all going to have down stairwells and up stairwells. And Scott had mentioned Rob Castrone and Pete Henke, two of our tech ed teachers, used our large format digital printer at the high school and printed in-house safety signage for all of the buildings, as far as the circles you see that to keep people spaced 6 feet apart, directional arrows, other safety reminders that will be placed all throughout the buildings. All of those signs that you see, just gentle reminders about washing hands when entering, or should say exiting the bathroom, after exiting the bathroom. All that stuff was done in-house and will be placed as reminders. But Joni talked about doing the dances. It's going to take some training, but through those processes, we're pretty comfortable that we can keep people safely distanced. Joni touched on it. Keeping people 6 feet apart at all times in the hallway, it would be a chore, and we would never indicate that we could profess to doing that with the number of students we're talking about, but the masks will be required during that time, and we'll have folks out there. Teachers will step out to make sure they're monitoring. The administration is going to make a point of being out there for the first several weeks consistently to help with reminders and stuff. But we feel like we've taken many precautions to make sure that those unstructured times are going to be safe.
Mark, this is a question about kindergarten. How will kindergarten drop off work, especially the first day? A parent of a kindergartner nervous about sending them the first day.
Sure. You know, in any other year, we would allow parents to walk their kids right down to the classroom. Unfortunately, that's just not doable this year. What we're going to do instead is we're asking that parents use the TRIS car circle to drop off their children onto the kindergarten playground, where the staff will be out there to meet them. And I kind of mentioned that, you know, before school, when I was speaking about that, about how the teachers are going to help the students line up. They're going to greet them, and they're going to walk through their assigned door to the classroom. We have open house on Wednesday. We're going to ask parents to come through that route so the students get a little more familiar with it, and the teachers will be out there to wave to them. I communicated that last week. We'll do that again tomorrow night, the night before open house, and teachers, I believe, have been reaching out to families kind of with similar language along the way. Unfortunately, allowing families into the building is just not in the cards this year.
How do specials work for the all virtual kids, not including Jedi virtual? So Mark, if you want to start with that one and we'll go up again.
Sure. From a K-2 standpoint, what we're asking specials teachers to do is we're asking to provide 5 lessons. And by 5 lessons, I mean 1 specials lesson each day that would fit into the virtual schedule. So there would be PE, music, art, and so on. And that would be uploaded to Google Classrooms where families could access that each day. We want their virtual day to be as similar to as the in-person day as we can.
Yeah, the only thing I would add is that, so it'll be scheduled. So the virtual teacher will say to the class, okay, today you have music, don't forget to go and do your music lesson. So instead of in the spring, they were all just kind of given at the beginning of the week, and we asked kids to just do them throughout the week. These will be scheduled, and teachers will be following up to make sure that students are accessing the specials as well.
And at the middle school level, the students will be joining in virtually just as they would with any of the other classes. So we're not treating specials any differently than what we're treating the core classes.
That would be same for the high school as far as elective courses.
Will appropriate IT support be available for students and teachers at each school to facilitate the much increased use of virtual learning this year? What is the plan if there are internet connectivity or technology issues? Scott talked a little bit about this earlier in the meeting. We have contracted with Creekside Place here in town, and they are going to be allowing students to come in if they have some Wi-Fi concerns or issues. We also have those hotspots available. Principals have been reaching out to families that had stated in registration that their Wi-Fi wasn't the greatest. We also know that there may be some issues regardless, even with those options there, and that will be something that we will have to focus on, and how to get the students caught up and get them the information that they need, especially, you know, the 612 things. And we kind of looked at it as if a student were sick for a day, how do we get them caught up, and approaching it that way. So they may be meeting with them at a different time, or when the next time they're in the building, getting caught up that way as well. Scott, you look like you wanted to say something, so I was hesitating.
Yeah, you know, the only thing I was going to add, and I'm not even sure if it's worth adding, but you know, we've got a full-time tech director and a full-time tech assistant, and both Larry and Griffin, you know, they are very, very loyal to the process of what we're trying to do, and they are going to bend over backwards to try to help our staff. I have the utmost faith in both of those guys in helping solve problems. They're just super, super smart dudes, and they know technology. But I do think that the question isn't, you know, what happens if the technology has troubles. I think the question is, well, what happens when? Because we do know that come September 1, you know, when the entire nation goes live, we do know that this is just bigger than an Evansville and a Wisconsin thing. I mean, we do believe that the taxation of internet service throughout the country is going to be taxed, you know, because we're not the only school, not the only school district in September that's going to be using, you know, increased bandwidth. So we know that's going to be an issue, but again, you know, when it came right down to it, we were just willing to roll the dice on some spotty internet occurrences versus trying to do it all asynchronously, which we did in the fall, which I think, you know, we all could admit that at least to some degree, last spring, we all wanted last spring to be a little bit better. So that's what we're trying to do, and that's kind of where we're at.
How will subs coming from various districts be handled and their potential for increased exposure?
So I can talk to this a little bit. We have hired some permanent subs for each of our buildings. So we have one for each building that will be designated to help out with subbing. We have also reached out to subs that have worked in Evansville and asked if they would consider subbing in our district, just in our district for a year, which is kind of a lot to ask. Some have said yes and some haven't. So we're starting with that pool first, that we will work with those subs first. If we need to go outside of that sub list or that pool of subs, we will then monitor them when they come in, and they will do a screener check at the door before they are let into the classrooms.
But our hope is that we don't use anybody that's not exclusive to Evansville. That's going to be our first choice, and we'll see how that works.
How long will the kids be going outside for gym, and will they be wearing their masks outside? Maybe we start this with Mark again.
Sure. It's the typical gym class block of about 32 minutes. They will be wearing their masks until the teachers identify that they are distanced far enough that it's a good time for them to take it off. Of course, any gym class with lots of running around is going to result in the need for a break from time to time, and the gym teachers would have the autonomy to make sure kids are spread out to take that break and take the mask off as long as those other safety measures are in place.
Yeah, and it would be the same at TRIS, except for at TRIS, we're going to be having 65-minute gym classes once a week, and then a 35-minute class another day of the week. But the PE teachers have already planned for how they are going to have kids break, have a mask break. They're going to be 9 feet apart and sit down, drink from their water bottle. So they have a lot of really good plans in place to make that work.
In the middle school, our Phi-Ed classes are much longer. We are at 86 minutes. And so kids will be outside as much as possible, even though we have a beautiful facility right now and an amazing gym space. We're still going to utilize outdoors as much as we can for the reason of that could be an opportunity for kids to take off their mask if they're, like Ms. Dorn had said, the 9 feet apart.
High school gym classes are also 85 minutes long, and that'll be 5 days a week for those students. The answer, I guess, to how long, as long as we can possibly do it with Wisconsin weather, and actually kudos to the Phi-Ed folks with getting creative as far as looking at maybe some outdoor winter activities like snowshoeing, like renting snowshoes and cross-country skiing. They had talked about in the fall here setting up an ultimate Frisbee course around the campus here to get kids out. So this is really got the creative juices flowing for not just Phi-Ed staff, but for all staff. But the answer would be as long as we can get them outside in whatever format and get them active.
Question about the supply boxes. So if you ordered supply boxes through the PTO, are the families able to come in and pick up the supplies ahead of school time?
At this point in the K2 and I believe K3-5, we have just sent them off to the classroom, so the classroom teachers have them. But if there's a family with a specific concern or you want to check them out, you don't hesitate to give me a call and we can make that happen in advance.
And this is again. Oh, go ahead, Barb.
Yeah, absolutely. At TRIS as well. Just let us know.
And this is Joni. Mark has graciously been holding on to our supply boxes since we didn't have a building until today. So if you have a child in 6 through 8 that needs those, we will get them to you as well. We'll be making some phone calls if we don't do pickup. Next question, will there be lockdown drills and how will that be handled? So we have to do a drill every single month. It doesn't necessarily have to be a lockdown drill, but we do have to do drills. As an admin team, we have been discussing the possibility of doing more tabletop type exercises. And we know that that isn't always the best type of exercise because that, you know, that you're actually doing it is when you have that muscle memory of things. However, we also need to make sure that we are following the safest protocols that we can. So we will be doing drills. We'll communicate those out to families, especially if it is a what was referred to here as a lockdown drill, but we use the ALICE protocol. So if we are doing an ALICE drill, we would communicate that to not only the community, but as well to all of the families involved and students too. They're never going to be a surprise. I think we might be at the last question here. It says, what effect does the White House's classification, oh wait, it's gone. It disappeared.
Well, I think the question was, you know, the White House has declared teachers as essential workers. You know, what exactly does that mean? How's the district going to treat that? I think the best response I have to that is if you mean in terms of teachers shouldn't quarantine, as I think has been suggested by some people of the White House, I mean, that's ludicrous. We're going to follow, you know, Rock County guidelines. We're going to, you know, follow the same procedures for staff are going to use just like students. I will say that we've kind of taken a, you know, all hands on deck approach. You know, some of us, you know, even myself, Jerry, Janessa, as district office administrators, we know that the time may come that we may need to, you know, polish off our, you know, teaching skills and step in a classroom and help out. We know we're going to do that. We know we've got some interventionists, some of the kind of like ancillary support positions that they're going to become teachers if we have to. And, you know, none of us want that scenario to happen, but if it does, you know, that's what we're going to do. So whatever it takes to get the district running, and all hands on deck. All right, is that the end of questions? I think it is. Oh, thank you for taking the time to answer all our questions and provide reassurance. Well, you're welcome. And by the way, and I think I mentioned this earlier, if at any point anybody has additional questions or you've got questions, you know, when this thing is over in 30 minutes, you think, oh, I wish I would have answered that, just go email that virtual learning email address that's on the website or look any of us up. You know, we're trying to do, you know, putting in full effort to get back to every single, you know, family that reaches out to us. So we're doing, you know, the best we can to make sure we stay on top of all the communication. So. All right, well, let's all hope for a great start to a school year. You know what, we've all taken kind of this attitude that we're, you know, gonna hope for the best, prepare for the worst. We know that if we need to, you know, pivot and transition our plan, we're gonna have to do that. But you know what, this is a pretty awesome community. This is a great place. You know, as an administrative team, I think we discussed, what do we have, like 10 or 12 kids of our own in the district here.
12.
You know, 12, yeah. So, you know, we were joking about that the other day. You know, I think this is an administrative team that's absolutely committed to trying to provide options for every family. And I do believe we've got the widest kind of breadth of options for families. You know, we got multiple virtual options. Now we just got to hope that, you know what, internet connectivity issues aren't a thing, and hope that we can execute and hopefully get us into phase 3 within a couple months. So we'll see. But yeah, appreciate all of the very nice, positive, supporting comments. So thank you, everybody. All right, and this will be posted on the website at some point. All right, take care. Signing off.